Well, I was wrong. I thought we would have two close games with Georgia, Ole Miss, and Bama, LSU. Instead, Ole Miss dominates Georgia, and Bama blows out the LSU Tigers in Baton Rouge. We are the Out of Bounds Show, ESPN 1059 The Zone. We're driven by Mack Hike Auto Group and also presented by Spring Street Cigars in Hattiesburg, Spring Street Cigars in Meridian, Starkville, Tupelo, and Oxford. I got to interview Rocky Patel on Friday, and y'all know I nerd out on cigars and stuff like that. He's like one of the goats of the industry. Second time I got to interview him live, by the way. We were at Spring Street Cigars in Hattiesburg having a cigar and beverage, and I had an absolute blast. That'll be on the podcast in about an hour. So it was super fun. We want to welcome in, speaking of our dude, Tom Luginbill, ESPN's college football team, coming off a crazy weekend. Lugs, did you have that on your bingo card? Ole Miss and Bama dominating Georgia and LSU?
Not dominating, no, not in any way, shape, or form. And by the way, you got to meet Rocky Patel?
I did, man. He's a star in the cigar industry. That's the second time.
Awesome. Yeah.
It was cool. You'll appreciate this as someone who's been in the business for 25 years. He's a season ticket holder to the University of Wisconsin-Madison. That's where he went. And then he's also a season ticket holder for the Green Bay Packers.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
I know.
That's great.
He sells over 30 million cigars a year, and he's just, and he wanted to talk football. You know, he wanted to talk Green Bay.
Really cool.
Been to 3 games this year. He goes to Wisconsin-Madison for at least one game every year. So he's like all of us, man. He's eating up with the fun game that we get to cover and watch and celebrate. I want to start with Ole Miss dominating Georgia and what their defensive line did to the Ole Miss offensive line, to the Georgia offensive line, and to Carson Beck. Walk us through what Pete Golding and that unit did to Bobo in Georgia.
Well, I think the thing to point out here first is, do you remember the first college game day in week 0 in Ireland? And Nick Saban on the set says very bluntly, the reason Ole Miss couldn't beat us or Georgia is because they couldn't compete up front. It wasn't because of skill guys. And what did Lane Kiffin go out and do? They went out and got a bunch of guys up front, right? And that's how you close the gap. You couldn't do that 5 years ago. Now all of a sudden you can wave a magic wand. And the bottom line is, Ole Miss was better than Georgia up front. I actually thought both sides of the ball. On that particular day. Would it be like that every single night, every single day? I don't know. But on that particular day, I think it was. And when you're dealing with conditions like that, and it's soggy, the ball's wet, and there's wind, you know, anything can happen. And I think the most important thing in that matchup wasn't also just how dominant and how physical Ole Miss was, but it was how they handled the environment. It was how they handled the conditions. You almost got the sense like it wasn't raining. And to me, I think that shows a real sign of maturity from a football team.
Yeah. Well, they answered the call, after 2 tough losses early in Kentucky and LSU. And this was a cluster of games, during the offseason. I know you do this on your shows. You kind of pick apart the schedule, right? The runs that you have to make, things that you have to manage. And this 3-game stretch was one that they had to, especially after dropping the game against Kentucky, they had to go undefeated against Oklahoma at home, at Arkansas, and Georgia at home, and they did just that. When you look at the defense, and Bama's D-line, Luke's, I thought played really well. But staying with Ole Miss in the SEC, do they have the best defensive line in the SEC, or is there 2 or 3 of them that are just within a whisker? How do you see that?
I think there's 2 or 3 or 4 within a whisker. I think on any given day, we've seen flashes from Texas A&M, Texas, Georgia when they're fully healthy, which they've rarely been in the defensive, front and front seven. Alabama over the last month has really come on defensively. I mean, they are a holy terror right now, and they've kind of figured out who they are and how they need to unleash their guys to get them to play at their highest level. I actually think, to be honest with you, this is going to sound crazy, and they have no shot because of what happened at quarterback, but Florida's defensive front is pretty good.
They are.
And it wasn't early, but they've got some guys that a lot of people would love to be playing with. So I think, again, this is kind of a mark of the league, right? Outstanding play up front, big physical guys, more of them than everybody else has, so you have competitive depth. And if you're going to look at Ole Miss exclusively in this conversation, I think that's where the gap was closed the most, and that is you could have a guy or two or three, but when that player goes off the field, what is the drop-off to the next guy that's coming on? And I think that's where Ole Miss solves a lot of their problems, is there's depth and then there's competitive depth. That's where I think they made some real inroads.
Tom Luginbill with ESPN. He joins us on the Farm Bureau Insurance guest line. Pete Golding had a good run at Bama, and he felt like he needed to get out for life, personal, family reasons. And so he hooks back up with someone he knows, that things line up. Lane makes a great hire. He's done a great job there. He's one of the top defensive coordinators in the country. Is he playing his way into some consideration for possible G5 or jobs at some point, Luke's?
Well, I think potentially, because we're still in that era where anybody who's tied to Nick Saban, everybody wants a piece of that, right? They think there's a magic sauce. They think that there's some secret that they're going to get their hands on. And it plays well, and the proof is in the pudding. I mean, look at how many guys have had opportunities that have been on Alabama's staff at some point that have become head coaches, and a lot of it is tied to that, right? And so, do I think he could put himself in that position? I certainly do. Now, I'll say this: I thought the Alabama fan base was wildly unfair to him, because you can say what you want, but when Kirby Smart left, they were still playing really good defense at Alabama. Yeah, they had top 3, 4, 5 defenses in the country under Pete Golding. But he, for whatever reason, and I think, it's kind of like replacing a legend as a head coach. You replace a mainstay in Kirby Smart as a defensive coordinator at Alabama for that long, you're going to fall under a lot of scrutiny the same way Kalen DeBoer has.
But you consider him one of the top defensive coordinators in the country right now in the game today?
Yes, I do. I think from a scheme standpoint, an approach standpoint, listen, I'm always very quick to point out that there's a lot of really good defensive coordinators out there who got really good players, right? And then there's a lot of really good coaches that don't have very good players that are struggling to come up with good teams. So, I think they go hand in hand. He's had the fortune of learning under a tried and true scheme at Alabama, and have the good fortune again of having very, very good players. Now, what I think he deserves some credit too is obviously he can recruit, because they've gone out and they've beat people on those guys.
Yes, they have. Whether
it's been in the transfer portal or at the high school level, that can't be glossed over either.
I agree. Tom Luginbill talking Ole Miss and Georgia. Is Carson Beck a shot fighter, or is that going overboard at this point?
I think this is just my personal opinion. People are going to tell you, well, look at Georgia's schedule. They've played arguably the most difficult schedule in the country. Yes, they have. Okay. Before I answer the Carson Beck question, if you were to take Georgia's G off their helmet and put South Carolina's Gamecock on Georgia's helmet, would you call them a playoff team?
No. Well, yeah, right now I would, because they have the neutral win against Clemson, which I think is a damn good non-conference win, and they went to Texas and won, absolutely. And their 2 losses are not bad losses at all. Going to Tuscaloosa and to Oxford and losing is nothing to be ashamed of. So if they beat Tennessee this weekend, finish 10-2, I think they are one of the top. Will they get in? I don't know. Somebody's going to get left out at 10-2 in the league. But should they get in? I would say yes.
It won't be them.
Yeah.
Yeah, it won't be them. But my point is, and I mentioned the schedule being very difficult, and I get that. Not a lot of people have had to play that schedule. But they haven't played well, though. Like, outside of the second half versus Clemson, the second half versus Alabama, and their win at Texas, and by the way, they turned the ball over 3 times in that game. They've been sloppy. They've been undisciplined. The quarterback's giving the ball to the other team a lot. They can't run the ball. They have no offensive weapon. Their biggest reception the other day was to Cash Jones, a 29-yard catch, and he's a running back. Like, they don't have guys. When you really peel back the layers, where are their weapons?
2 of them are in the NFL, but other people have to deal with that too. You know, I mean, McConkey and and Bauer. We're used to them.
That happens all the time.
Right. Ra got in trouble. Something else happened to another guy. I mean, they don't have the dudes on the outside or in the backfield, Luke's, that they've had. I don't mean they don't have talented players, but, you know. So, all right, let's go to Tom Luginbill on the Out of Bounds show. Bama LSU, and are you ready to say they've got this thing figured out? Or because almost everybody's on crazy pills and Jekyll and Hyde throughout the year, are you buying Alabama more than you were a few weeks ago when they lost to Vanderbilt in Tennessee?
I have bought Alabama all year long on talent, right? But talent's not their problem. Their problem has been style of play, undisciplined, sloppy, heavily penalized, turn the ball over. Where I think that they've done a remarkable job is, number one, they got healthy. You're not going to tell me that in the month of October, Jalen Milroe was dinged up and banged up. You could tell when he was running. He was hesitant to even try and run, right? You saw burst, explosion, speed, all of it on Saturday night. He looked like himself, right? So I credit Nick Sheridan, the offensive coordinator, Kalen DeBoer, for identifying exactly what they are and what makes them go. And that's him as a runner. And that's what this Alabama iteration is going to be. Now, is that what they would have done with Michael Penix at Washington the last 2 years? Of course not, right? Because that's not what they were. But this is who they are. And they're riding it, and I think they're smart to do so. The passing game's always going to be there, and in the same conversation, there are always going to be some struggles and some challenges. It's never probably going to look all that pretty, but it's a compliment to the most dangerous person who touches the ball on offense, probably in college football, in every single play. So, I remember Mike Leach used to say about balance. He'd say, balance is full of baloney. Balance is what's working, right? This is what's working for them. So this is what they're doing. Conversely, on the defensive side of the football, I think they were very, very cautious early on. New scheme, new leadership. After 17 years, a completely different approach. You've got 3 true freshmen mixed into your defensive back end, and you have to play with a lot of them. I thought they were overly protective with them early, didn't want to expose them. And then I think all of a sudden those young guys have really grown up. Jalen Mbakwe, Davian Brown, have really Dominic Jackson has come over from USC. Those guys have started to hold up their end of the bargain on the back end, and now all of a sudden Alabama has become an upfield disruptive pressure team because they're not afraid of getting beat on the back end. They're that talented there. It just took several weeks because there were so many true freshmen back there. So the way I look at it is this. You got to play your best football in November, okay? Kalen DeBoer is 9-0 as a Power 5 head coach in November.
Wow.
He's 33-2. 33-2 as a head coach overall in the month of November. There's a reason why this Alabama team is playing good.
All right, give me your top 5 or maybe more SEC. I don't know where to go just because these teams are so bunched up. Ole Miss looks good. Bama, Texas. Mm-hmm. I know they're good.
I think they're splitting hairs. Listen, I think Texas probably would be a lean for me at number 1. I think it's a toss-up at number 2 between Tennessee and Ole Miss. I would have no issue either way. What do you do with Alabama? Do I think Alabama could line up and beat Ole Miss? Yeah. Do I think they could get into another game with Tennessee and win the game? Yeah. Do I think they could beat Texas? Yeah. All right, but they're sitting there right now at 7-2. I wouldn't put them any lower probably than 4. And then I would say my 5 would be probably Georgia, even though I don't like how they're playing. I still think they're a little better than Texas A&M. And I would actually have South Carolina ahead of Missouri. Because they play this week.
I know. In Columbia, South Carolina. Good grief. Shane Beamer. Wow. He's going to get an extension. Okay. So Tom Luginbill on the out of bounds.
He's done a great job.
He is. And his defensive coordinator's crushing it. How about that Missouri-Oklahoma finish? How wild was that, Tom Luginbill?
Unbelievable. You see Eli Drinkwitz takes a shot at Bob Stoops.
What?
I mean, you score 14 points in 63 seconds. Pretty unbelievable, and it's really reflective of the type of year Oklahoma's had.
What did Eli Drinkwitz say?
Drink says, "This will be real." I'm going to read it off. This will be real disappointing to Bob Stoops, but OU doesn't always whip Missouri's ass anymore.
Oh, wow. Wow.
I guess Bob had made a couple of statements earlier in the week.
Good grief. That is beautiful. Okay. Nationally, do you see are you buying, who are you buying? Miami lost. I mean, Cristobal, God bless him. Great recruiter, you know, and every and they landed Cam Ward, but they just, I just kept saying, I don't believe, and I don't against some of these other coaches like DeBoer and Lane and maybe some of the others.
Well, better put Brent Key in that because it's 2 years in a row now.
Dude, that guy. I mean, they fired Jeff Collins, promoted Brent. They didn't. I don't think people thought they were going to hire him. They hired him. And the dude at a place where, you know, you started there at quarterback is hard to win, academically top 10. He's winning, but I can't go there right now. So Oregon, tell me who you're buying outside the league is, hey, there's no doubt they can take the physicality and go toe-to-toe in a college football playoff all the way through January 15th.
I don't know if I'm convinced of that with Oregon. Maybe. I think Ohio State's built that way. I think Texas is potentially built that way. Alabama, the way they're playing now, is built that way. I wouldn't say anybody out of the Big 12 is. Penn State, potentially.
Nah.
You know, it's a handful of Tennessee, maybe.
Okay.
I mean, there's a handful out there, but I mean, you say that, and then you look at how BYU's playing. You look at how Indiana's playing. You look at how SMU is playing. But I got to be honest with you, man. If you're going to play 4 games, like you're going to have an incredible amount of luck. You're going to have elite quarterback play, and you won't be able to get injured. And you're going to have to be fantastic up front on both sides of the ball. And when it gets down to it, what are there going to be? 2 to 3 teams that can say they can pull that off?
Okay. Bama, Texas, Ohio State, and one of those mix that you threw out, right? Ole Miss, possibly Tennessee.
Tennessee, maybe.
Nico is interesting. You know, how do you say it? Iamaleava? Iamaleava. He went down, but now they say he's playing against Georgia. Who do you like in that game this weekend? Let's rapid fire through here. We got a few minutes. Who do you like in Tennessee at Georgia this weekend?
Listen, I like Tennessee, and it's not because of the offense; it's because of the defense. They are playing outstanding defense, and as I mentioned earlier, Georgia's got no weapons. If they can't run the football and they can't win one-on-one, where is Carson Beck supposed to throw the ball to? And that's a real concern if you're a Georgia fan. I know the game's being played in Athens, but I like Tennessee.
Okay. What about LSU at Florida? I don't know if Lagway's going to come back, but they're playing better football than their record reflects.
Absolutely.
And if Lagway can come back, do you like Florida in that game?
Potentially, yes. Listen, I don't think Florida loses to Georgia if Lagway doesn't get hurt.
Right. You said that last week.
I thought Florida was going to eventually win that game. Now, they had no shot at Texas with what they're playing with, and they will have no shot versus LSU because, unfortunately, God bless the young man, but he's not capable of playing Power 5 SEC successful football at the level you need him to against the caliber of teams that they're playing. So they would have to have DJ Lagway back to give him a shot. Have to.
Okay. All right. I don't even know if you have one, but if you had a Heisman vote, who would you vote for?
I do have a Heisman vote. I can't tell you exactly who I would vote for, but my probably top two would be Travis Hunter and Ashton Genty.
There you go. Is Colorado's on a roll, but are they playing Travis Hunter too much?
Well, apparently not too much because he's still standing upright. What's amazing about that whole thing is not just Travis Hunter, not just Shedeur Sanders, but the position that Colorado is in. Really think this thing through. They control their own destiny in the college football playoff. Let that sink in. So you look at the Big 12 prior to the season, and you looked at Colorado's schedule, you would have said they might win 4 games. Now you look at the last 4 weeks. Now look at the teams that they had to play. Who was supposed to be really good? Oklahoma State? Nope. Kansas? Nope. Utah? Nope. Texas Tech? Nope. All 4 of those teams were supposed to be contenders for the Big 12 title, and they all laid an egg. That's the remaining 4 teams on Colorado's schedule.
Whoa. For our listeners, Colorado's 5-1 in the Big 12 and 7-2 overall. That's what Lugs is talking about as far as prime.
So they just got better. The Big 12 got worse. They got just enough better, and now they're in the driver's seat. Can you imagine? Unbelievable. And they deserve a lot of credit for it.
They do. They do. Where are you this week, my man?
I've got a local game. I've got Wake Forest with North Carolina, so I get to drive up and drive back, which is rare.
Ooh,
I enjoy that.
That's awesome. Wonder who's going to be North Carolina's new coach. Dan Mullen.
I don't know, but they're playing damn good.
Okay.
Won like 3 in a row and dominated the last 3 games.
Is Mac Brown going to pull this off again?
I don't know. You might. They've had 17 sacks in the last 2 weeks.
Good Lord. What is going on? All right, buddy. Be good.
All right. See ya. Bye.
Tom Luginbill, National College Football Analyst with ESPN. He joined us on the Farm Bureau Insurance Guest Line. The show is brought to you by the Armory Lake Harbor in Ridgeland. For all your firearms, optics, and suppressors, the Armory is located right in front of Kroger on Lake Harbor in Ridgeland.